Okay, welcome to Read for Speed. We're Abnormal Mapping, a podcast about video games. You can find us on iTunes. Just search Abnormal Mapping. I'm Matthew Marco. With me is Jackson Tyler.
AOL keywords.
Hashtag join the conversation. Hashtag Abnormal Mapping. You can find us on Tout. No, we're not on Tout. We're here for Read for Speed. This is our last week doing this. This is week 4. It's been a long road getting from there to here.
It's true.
I am reading Need for Speed, based on the DreamWorks motion picture inspired by the hit EA video game series. It's a novelization of this stupid goddamn book. It's terrible. Jackson's playing Burnout Paradise, which is not terrible. A reminder that Need for Speed used to be the also ran to a much better driving game.
Yeah.
That they should have made a movie out of anthropomorphized cars doing insane stunts.
It'd be the Burnout movie would just be the story of the lonely life of a man who is a DJ to a city of cars.
So we're most of the way through this book. We're in chapter 19, in the middle of a section. They just escaped. Toby and Julia had just escaped Nebraska, where I live. They had outwitted a cop. They're trying to get to California to compete in the De Leon. And there's a bounty on his head, which is going to come up very shortly. If you don't know, go see the movie. It's bad, but in an okay way.
Yep.
You would agree?
Yes. That's
okay.
It's not as bad in an okay way as you want, but it's fine.
Chapter 19. The sunrise over the Utah mountains was like something from a postcard. Julia was still driving. Toby had fallen asleep a long time ago. All was quiet inside the Mustang. No iPhone chat, no police scanner, no Monarch.
Oh.
Julia felt good, and she was feeling fully confident behind the wheel of the supercar until disaster struck. One moment she was driving along in high-speed contentment. The next, the Mustang was hit violently from behind. The supercar went sideways from the impact. Julia saw that a huge Hummer-like vehicle had come... Hummer-like vehicle, not a Hummer. It's just like a Hummer.
That is Hummer-esque, yo.
Had come up behind them, and she knew instinctively it was the Flying Hawaiian... what? It was the Flying Hawaiian.
That guy that got introduced that isn't in the film.
Yeah, but how does she know that?
She instincts.
But she was terrified to see his right seater hanging out by the window, aiming a shotgun at her. Toby woke up in an instant. The Mustang was out of control and Julia was screaming. Jesus, she bellowed. That was on purpose. Toby realized what was happening in a microsecond. He yelled, yeah, thanks to Dino's bounty. Julia regained control of the car, but suddenly a glossy chrome Hummer and a muddy Bronco appeared from the opposite direction.
This time is an actual Hummer.
Yeah, not Hummer-esque. He was never one to fight fairly. The Flying Hawaiian and his goons were trying to trap them. They're going to seal us off, Toby yelled at Julia. Drift onto the shoulder. Nope, she said to his surprise. I got a better idea. And that is, he yelled at her. I'm going for the Hummer, she said. He's a pavement prowler. Toby was confused. Pavement prowler, he repeated proudly. Or loudly, not proudly. That doesn't make any sense. Show car with the big lift kit, Julia yelled back. Helps make up for the inferiority complex. She held out her pinky finger and let it droop. Toby got the idea. Small package. Freight and turtle. She hit the gas hard, accelerating mightily towards the oncoming vehicles. In an instant, she swerved into the wrong lane, aiming right for the Hummer. It was a game of chicken, a very deadly one. Toby grabbed the dash and door, holding on for dear life, just as Julia had done so many times earlier in the trip. He heard his own voice screaming, "Are you crazy?" But Julia didn't lift her foot off the gas. She kept driving right at the Hummer. Only at the last possible instant did the big truck swerve to miss her. But in doing so, it piled up on the highway's median, hitting a rock wall head-on. The impact caused the big truck to flip, end over end in midair. Julia simply drove under the airborne wreck and kept right on going. This got Toby's heart rate pumping, maybe like never before. Maybe. He's not a doctor. He doesn't know any doctors. But maybe. It felt pretty intense. Wow, you are crazy, he yelled. This is pod racing. Julia looked over at him and smiled. Her expression said it all. She was quite impressed with herself. Then came the shotgun blast. Toby heard it clearly above all the commotion and the roar of his Mustang's mighty engine. He turned to see the Flying Hawaiian's Baja pre-runner right on their trail. His right seater was leaning out of the window, an enormous 12-gauge in hand. A second later, he fired another shotgun blast. The back window of the Mustang exploded in a shower of sparks and glass. Both Toby and Julia ducked just in time to avoid getting hit by the flying shards. The Mustang was suddenly swerving uncontrollably. "Keep it straight," he yelled to Julia. "I'm trying," she yelled back. Toby looked out of the newly windowless back and saw that the Flying Hawaiian was on the radio, even as he was bearing down on the Mustang. His right seater was back out the window, aiming another shotgun blast. This time it seemed the Mustang's rear tires were his targets. Suddenly Julia was urgently tapping Toby's shoulder. He looked straight ahead and saw 2 cement trucks driving at full throttle, coming down the highway, aiming right at the Mustang. Toby quickly grabbed his radio. "Liar 1, he yelled for Benny. "You got your ears on?" Then Toby saw a dirt road off to the left. It was coming up fast. He yelled to Julia, "Take your foot off the gas when I say so, and then go hard left, okay?" "Okay," Julia said, concentrating as best she could. "Your instinct is going to be to let go," Toby warned her. "Just do it," she yelled back at him. Toby yanked the emergency brake, and Julia took a hard left. Amid the smoke from the tires and exhaust, the Mustang drifted perfectly onto the dirt road. But the Flying Hawaiian followed, and was suddenly driving with even more confidence than before. In his mind, the Mustang had just taken his bait and fallen into his trap. There was a fork in the road up ahead, and the Bronco took it, disappearing from view. The Mustang continued on the side road and began climbing up the side of a mountain, going through a series of hard lefts and rights, all at extremely high speed. But then they came to a scary hairpin turn. Julia was trying her best, but she turned too quickly and then tried to overcompensate, almost bouncing the car off the cliff wall. What she lacked in skill, though, she made up for with pure aggression. "Damn it," she yelled. "I should be better at this." "Don't let up," Toby yelled back at her. "You're doing good."
That's always the best combination in drivers, if they have no skill but lots of aggression. I feel that always leads to a great outcome for all.
Julia took his advice and stood on the gas pedal. Nearby, but out of their sight, the Ford Bronco was blasting up a parallel dirt road. It was rough, but the truck suspension was more than a match for it. In fact, it was actually gathering speed as it went uphill. At the same time, the Flying Hawaiian was right behind the Mustang and gaining on them. His right seater fired another shotgun blast. This one hit off a huge boulder right in front of their supercar, showering it with rock fragments. The Hawaiian's right seater was being bounced around a lot as he tried to reload. As a result, most of his shotgun shells had fallen to the floor of the Baja. Still, the Flying Hawaiian was just a few feet off of the Shelby's bumper. The mad chase continued, the Mustang going extremely fast, kicking up dirt and gravel, the Baja getting closer by the second. Then the road abruptly turned off the 2-lane dirt path to almost no road at all. Suddenly the Mustang was going over some very rough ground, not its best trait. Toby searched a map on his iPad. "We've got to find another road," he yelled to Julia. "Up here?" Julia yelled back. "There's only one road, or there was." Toby grabbed the radio and started shouting into it again. Liar 1, we need you." The Flying Hawaiian was right on the Mustang's ass now, just inches away. That kind of driving was what he had built for. Spitting dirt and rock, all 4 barrels wide open. As they raced up the side of the mountain at breakneck speed, the truck was gaining on the Mustang with every second. The biggest problem was the Mustang was not built for off-roading, and its undercarriage was seriously bottoming out. Julia was driving as fast as she could without tearing the wheels off the car, but it was no use. They were nearing the summit of the mountain, and their pursuers would be on them in seconds. But then came, ellipses, a miracle of sorts. And it was all thanks to an angel named Benny. Suddenly, the Mustang's windshield was filled with the sight of an enormous CH-53 Super Stallion helicopter. The gigantic aircraft rose above the Mustang and floated to a position right over it. Toby was immediately on the radio. "Liar 1, he yelled. "Is that you?" Suddenly, drop lines from the helicopter fell to the ground and dragged along both sides of the supercar. Then Toby and Julia heard Benny's voice fill the car. "Hook up," he was yelling. "Hurry!" Benny was in the co-pilot seat for the massive U.S. Army helicopter. An Army pilot was in the seat next to him. "Sergeant," the man was yelling at Benny now, "this is not what we discussed." "It'll be fine, sir," Benny told him. "Don't worry." Still driving as fast as they could, Toby and Julia ran to the helicopter's lift hooks through the open windows of the Mustang. Then Toby connected them together inside. Benny's voice came over the radio again. "Tell me you believe I can fly an Apache helicopter," he yelled at Toby. Toby couldn't believe what he was hearing. "What?" was all he could reply. The Mustang and the Super Stallion helicopter were now hooked together, attached by the drop lines. Suddenly, up ahead, Toby and Julia could see the Bronco coming right at them. A collision was imminent. But Benny wasn't lifting them yet. "I'm serious," he called down to Toby. "Tell me." Julia yelled at Toby. "Say whatever he wants." Toby quickly relented. He yelled into the microphone. "Okay, you can fly an Apache helicopter." "And my handle's Maverick," Benny responded. "Call me Maverick." "Okay," Toby replied. "You're Maverick. You're a fucking Maverick." They could hear Benny's laughing over the radio speaker. "Now, was that so hard?" he asked. The Bronco was seconds from penning them off with the Flying Hawaiian still glued to the rear, but the edge of the cliff was also coming up fast. Julia had no other choice. She drove the Mustang off the cliff, and at that very instant, the Super Stallion's straps went taut, catching the supercar and suspending it underneath. Toby and Julia couldn't believe what was happening. "Holy shit," she yelled. "This is crazy!" The Flying Hawaiian and his right seater watched in disbelief as the enormous helicopter flew the Mustang up and out of their grasp. But there was one problem. The Mustang was hanging almost straight down over the vast gorge below. The bottom of the gorge suddenly filled their windshield. Julia and Toby were pointing straight down, even as the helicopter began to gain altitude. But because Julia was terrified of heights, this was her worst nightmare. "Oh my God," she screamed again. "Oh my God." She was so terrified that she was holding her breath, which was turning her face beet red. She was freaking out and trying to cry, but she couldn't because she had no air. Toby grabbed her by the shoulders. "Julia, look at me," he yelled. She did as he asked, but was still red in the face and still not breathing. "Focus on my eyes," he told her. "Now breathe, Julia, breathe." Julia exhaled and started gasping, but it was a start. Toby continued to soothe her. "Good," he said. "Now breathe, relax, and focus on my eyes. What color are they?" "Blue," Julia managed to reply. "They're really blue. A little bluer than yours," Toby told her. "No, they're not," she said, and for one fleeting and crazy moment, they were lost in each other's eyes. Then finally, Julia smiled broadly. She was breathing again. Toby had successfully talked her down. At that moment, the huge helicopter banked to the left and flew on, the Mustang hanging safely below. Well, now they're in love, I guess.
I forgot how bad this book is. Every week I just forget just how poorly written every single line is. Because holy shit.
Well, you remember now. You remember now.
They were lost in each other's eyes.
Chapter 20. Every racing car enthusiast in the world knew about the Bonneville Salt Flats. A giant flat piece of desert located in northwest Utah, it was, in reality, a gigantic dry lake bed surrounded on all sides by picture-perfect mountains. This is the place where many race car records have been broken over the years, and where many experimental cars and motorcycles have been tested. Sitting here now was the Beast, with Joe Peck and Finn lounging in the back, waiting for a prearranged meetup with the Mustang. Suddenly, they were aware of something flying over the mountains and heading right for them. They stared at it silently for a long time. "Is that our car?" Finn finally gasped. "Under a helicopter?" Joe added. It was the Mustang, and it was being carried by an enormous helicopter, but they couldn't believe what they were seeing. "Do they put something in the water out here?" Finn asked. "Mormon acid or something?" The helicopter went into a hover right above them. The downwash from its blades kicked up a blizzard of white dust and salt, but still Joe and Finn could see that while it was the Mustang, its undercarriage was heavily damaged. The car was lowered to the ground. The front end touched first, fairly gently, but then the back end came down hard, crashing to the ground like a heap of junk. The car was immediately detached from the copter's cables. Suddenly the doors opened and Toby and Julia emerged from the mangled racer. Joe Peck and Finn ran over to them, still fighting the copter's massive downwash. "Jesus!" Joe exclaimed. "What the hell happened? Are you guys okay?" They both answered at once. Toby said yes, while Julia replied with a resounding no. Meanwhile, the huge copter rose in altitude with its hook cables dangling. Then, from another direction, came another thunderous noise. It dwarfed any racket that the Shelby had ever made. Suddenly, 2 F-16 fighter planes roared overhead. The 4 of them watched in awe as the 2 jets screamed by. "Something tells me they want their helicopter back," Julia said. Looking up at the fierce warplanes, the Beast radio came to life. A very authoritative voice boomed. "1 Alpha Bravo Victor Charlie. This is the United States Army." Then they heard Benny's voice. "Hope everyone is okay down there," he said. "Might have to go away for a bit." They all watched as the helicopter turned east and sank behind some hills. "Godspeed, boys," they heard Benny said before the copter disappeared for good. Suddenly, they were all alone out on the expansive salt flats. The wind was blowing, but everything else was quiet. No one said anything for a few moments. It had been a strange turn of events, to say the least. Finally, Toby told them a quick version of the story and then nodded toward the banged-up Mustang. He looked at Joe as if to say, "What do you think?" Joe just laughed. "Yeah, we can make her run again," he said, "but just do your best," Toby told him. Joe and Finn didn't move, though. They had to have a serious talk with Toby. "We heard about your cop friend getting chained back in Nebraska," Joe told him. "And Benny is going to be in the brig in about 10 minutes, Finn said. "Plus, there's an APB out for your arrest in at least 10 states right now," Joe added. Toby just shrugged. "So what's your point?" he asked them. "Maybe we should rethink the plan," Joe finally suggested. Toby just stared back at his 2 friends. "Dino took everything from me," he said to them. "From us, including Pete. Pete got put in the ground, and Dino went to sunny California like nothing happened. A long pause ensued. The wind was blowing fiercely across the flats. No one said a word. You guys do what you think is right, Toby finally told him, but I'm never going to stop. Part 6. How's it going? Holding up?
It's going pretty good. God, am I glad this book's almost over.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
At least, like, considering how fucking long that one race at the beginning took.
Yeah. Well, we've still got one race left. I'm sure it takes up a majority of what's left of this book.
What if it's just like 4 pages?
That would be great. It's dumb because the best gags in that entire movie are in that race, but...
It's true.
I mean, you have the Gooch and English Paul.
The Gooch, English Paul, Texas Mike, Johnny V.
Oh, that's right, Johnny V. Fucking Johnny V, oh my god.
Which, you know, a specific in fact, I would say a far larger subset of the people who would see any other movie than Need for Speed got that. It wasn't deliberate, but, you know.
Let's pretend.
Yeah, maybe. If only.
It was mid-afternoon when the Mustang blew past a sign that read, "Welcome to Nevada." The car was a mess. The undercarriage was in shambles. The body had dents galore. It was dirty and dusty all over, especially the remaining windows, which were coated with some kind of greasy slime.
Did he just say dents galore?
Dents galore.
Wow. Wow.
But it could still move very fast, and at that moment, Toby had the accelerator buried. Julie was back in the right seat. She had been pensive since they'd left the salt flats. "What are you thinking about?" she finally asked Toby. "That I never should have made that deal with Dino," he replied. The expression on his face told the tale. Dealing with Dino had been akin to dealing with the devil. "You needed the money, though," Julia told him. "Nothing wrong with that." "My father would have never done it," Toby replied sternly. Julia let that comment sit for a while. "Is your mom alive?" she asked him quietly. "No," he replied. "That's too bad," Julia said. "What was she like?" "She was beautiful," he replied wistfully. I'm just going to do Batman voice, apparently. For...
How many human beings, if you ask them, "Oh, what's your mum like?" respond immediately with, "She's beautiful"?
I don't know. Nobody, probably.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. Not the first adjective that comes to mind when thinking of, you know.
Just wait. Read the next sentence. In fact, before she met my dad, she used to model for calendars. Tasteful ones.
Okay, this book just got dark. What is
the kind they'd hang up in repair garages and gas stations way back when.
Real tasteful,
She
yeah.
could have gone to New York and done some real modeling, but she chose to get married and start a family instead. It must have been a big decision for her, Julia said. Do you think it worked out the way she wanted it to? I think so, he replied. I mean, when I was a real little kid, I remember that she was always smiling, always a big smile on her face whenever I looked up at her. It was the same way when I was growing up. I loved driving on the go-kart track and then later the shifter cars. She'd always be there to watch me, her and my dad. And I'd go around the course a few dozen times, and she was always just standing there, not rooting me on as much as just smiling at me every time I went by.
I'm Batman.
Yep, I'm Batman. I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Is that your go-to Batman line, then?
It's the best Batman line because it's the dumbest Batman line.
It's true.
She died when you were young, I take it? Julia asked. Yeah, when I was 11, Toby replied quietly. I was too dorky to figure out what was going on until it was too late. Because dorkiness makes you bad at medicine, apparently. Just a lot of doctor's visits at odd times of day. Sometimes early in the morning, sometimes in the middle of the night. But she was always there when I woke up in the morning, always had my breakfast ready. It all seemed really strange at the time. Then came the trips to the hospital, again at weird hours, and after that she wasn't always there to make my breakfast in the morning. Then one day, I was coming home from school, and I saw her being put into an ambulance, and I saw my father crying, the one and only time for that.
Of course.
She held my hand for a moment, and she never stopped smiling. Then the ambulance took off, siren, lights flashing, the whole bit, but I never saw her alive again. Part of this is just my vocal fry after 2 hours of talking.
Part of
Is
it.
actually just how this is going.
Part of it is just this is a real. Part of it is the fact that by framing it, his story about his mum dying immediately after, yo, my mum was hot. It all takes on a certain tone.
Julia's breath caught in her throat. That's heartbreaking, Toby, she said. He just shrugged. Everyone has to go through it eventually, right? He said. It was just that I was still a kid. My father was just never the same afterward. I felt like we grew old together, just the two of us in a big empty house. Then one day at work, he was under a car, changing an oil line, and he had a heart attack. He was dead before the EMTs got there, even before I could call 911. Peck was there the day it happened. I'd never seen Peck cry either until that day. Julia was on the verge of tears herself. She touched his arm, lightly and only for a moment. They sound like good people, she told him. Your father, solid, hard-working. Your mom, beautiful. You made her happy. That's why she was always smiling. And it was probably all the Valium she took because she gave up her career to live in this freaking podunk city.
With this garbage garage. When she could
Garbage garage. Good job. That only works in British.
Yeah. Even though we don't actually say garbage over here. If I sound on edge, by the way, it's because my light in my room, and I assume so, keeps turning off and on randomly. I have no idea why, and that's what's going on right now over here.
Okay, well, we all live our own personal hells right now. She was beautiful, Toby said again after taking a deep breath.
Oh, was she? Okay.
He looked right at Julia and added, and while I'm not the smartest guy in the world, I do know a beautiful woman when I see one.
Great.
Oh.
Just great. Just real great here.
Several hundred miles to the west, Dino and Anita were in his 2012 Ferrari Berlinetta driving through the streets of San Francisco. Dino was on the wheel and on the phone. He was all but ignoring Anita. They arrived at a very exclusive restaurant, pulling up out front with the screech. Only then did Dino hang up the phone. Damn it, he cursed. How much do you owe him? Anita asked him. Or should I ask, at what point will they actually break your kneecaps? Dino paid her no mind, but she decided to press him. Those two goons that came to the shop yesterday, she said. They work for him, don't they? Dino just looked at her with very hard eyes, but still remained silent. How did it happen, she asked. How'd you get in so deep with these mobsters? It's none of your business, Dino said. He was growing angry. Just stay out of it. At least they give him, like, a reason to have turned.
Yeah.
Like, to be in this.
Doesn't happen at all. Except that they kept one scene of that plot in there. And actually cut the plot.
Just enough to give it zero context.
Just enough to make it just like, why is he having this business meeting? Okay, why is he? What on earth is going on? Okay, sure.
No, I won't, she shot back at him. I can't. Referring to staying out of his business, by the way, because we were talking over this. Because it's so hard to follow. Look, I'm taking care of it, he said sternly, but she would not let up. Why is Toby risking everything to race you, she asked him. He has so much to lose if he's caught, so much to lose even if he isn't. It makes no sense unless... Watch yourself, Dino warned her darkly. At that moment, the restaurant's valet, Juan, tried to open the Ferrari's door, but Dino had locked it. He tapped on the window as another car pulled up in back of the mega-expensive sports car. Dino cracked the window and said, Hey, Paco, you touch this car again and you're screwed. You understand? With that, Dino rolled up the window back up. In the next moment, Juan, a few more valets, and some passing customers witnessed a shocking sight. A heated argument had erupted inside the Ferrari between Dino and Anita. Suddenly, Dino slapped Anita brutally across her face. She was stunned for a moment, as if she couldn't believe what had just happened. But then she immediately jumped out of the car, slammed the door loudly, and started walking very fast down the sidewalk. Dino was out of the car in an instant as well, and began running after her. He caught up with her in a few seconds, grabbing her roughly by the arm. He tried to yank her back to the car, but stopped when he realized a small crowd of people was watching him. I'm sorry, Dino blurted out, just loud enough for the onlookers to hear. I didn't mean it. But Anita wasn't buying it. She yanked her arm back and hurried away. At that moment, Dino's Ferrari screeched away from the curb. Juan, the valet, was behind the wheels that roared down the street. Dino began yelling at the other valets, Hey, tell Paco to bring that fucking car back. But all the other valets could do was shrug, and watch as Juan drifted around the next corner and went out of sight, leaving nothing behind but smoke spewing from the Ferrari's